Thank you for listening to Comics for Fun and Profit. This is Drew with a special episode of my other podcast that I co-host regularly, and it's Weekly Comic Spotlight over at John Mayo's comic book page. And for those of you who haven't heard it, I wanted to give you a chance to listen to it. It's a standard review show of a Marvel, a DC, and an independent comic each week. So check this out, and if you like it, go over there and subscribe or check out those episodes. They're a lot of fun. So thanks again for listening. Here you go.
This is Weekly Comics Spotlight, number 537 for comics originally released on November 22nd, 2017. Now, starting us off in DC is Doomsday Clock number 1 of 12. This was pitched and teased as kind of the next big major kind of thing in the meta arc for DC, and you know me, Drew, I'm a diehard DC fan. So I was really looking forward to this. And then I read it. This, now, I'll be honest, the solicit warned me. It was, quote, "You are not prepared for what lies ahead within these pages, good readers." That turned out to be very accurate. I was not prepared. This spent way too long on the Watchmen side of things for me, and I was amped up for a big DC thing, kind of like, you know, the DC Universe Rebirth special and whatnot. And after, 26 pages of what may have well have been Watchmen number 13, we get a 4-page backup, essentially, of Superman sleeping and having a nightmare / flashback or something, and that was about it. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, I liked Watchmen, but I don't consider it to be the be-all, end-all of comics. There are a lot of things here that are hearkening heavy towards it, from the typeface of the title to the heavy but not ubiquitous use of a 9-panel grid. Gary Frank's art style is the right art style for a Watchmen-esque feel. But this felt like a bait and switch. I was expecting a story focusing on the DC universe and what's going on there and how the Watchmen stuff impacts it, not a Watchmen story that's teasing how the DC universe may impact it. And that may seem like semantics, but it's like 26 pages versus 4 pages. To me, it's a huge difference. It wasn't bad, but it absolutely was not what I was expecting. And I don't really know where they're going with the Watchmen side of things, and I kind of don't really care. I didn't feel a burning need to read a quote-unquote after Watchmen series. Granted, I read all the before Watchmen stuff. So this, I'm really torn on this. What we got was a brilliantly drawn story. The story was well executed for what it was, but, I mean, maybe I would have been better off if I had just reread Watchmen, but frankly, I'm not that much of a Watchmen fan to feel the need to go do that, and I wasn't expecting a full plus, issue of Watchmen. I was looking for, Easter eggs. It's like when we did one of the Dark Knight Metal lead-ins, Forge or Casting, whichever it was, and I'm like, ooh, look where they brought in, these characters, and this guy's back, and all that kind of stuff. I was hoping for that, and I didn't get it.
I don't remember the solicit that you mentioned. I don't know if I paid that much attention to it. But when I saw the cover and the poster in the window of Cowabunga Comics, actually, I was like, oh, that's blatantly going to be a Watchmen sequel. And then I read the Ash Can that they released. It was like 8 pages.
I did not read that. Okay.
And I was like, oh, this is amazing. This is just in the same tone and voice as the Watchmen. And then I really got excited because I am a Watchmen fan. I think Watchmen is one of the greatest comic stories ever told. And so for me, for them to be able to capture that sense and sensibility of the original series, legendary series, and pick up in a way that made me feel like it really hadn't missed a beat and we were moving into some new cool territory with it. I thought they did a really good job with that. But I didn't have the expectations you had. I expected it to be in the world of the Watchmen, and that was where we were going, and then we were going to pull in some other DC flavor as the series progressed. But I kind of knew from the Ash Can what this issue was going to be.
All right,
and so I had my expectations set pretty spot on, and I thought it was really rewarded because I thought the art was just pitch perfect. The tone was pitch perfect, and the new Rorschach I thought was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the scenes were wonderful. The subversive takes on society was really good and prescient, and I dug a lot about this thing, and I'm excited about where this thing goes.
And I can see exactly where you're coming from. I think, again, you went in with much better expectations than I did. I was looking for something that was going to build off of DC Universe Rebirth, The Button, and Lonely Place of Living, and the Oz Effect and stuff. Not Watchmen. But to your point, they captured the tone and the style of Watchmen exceedingly well. They had some fun characters here. The mime I thought was great. It's just that's not the comic I thought I was going to be reading here. And that's where the kind of the dissonance set in for me of what it's doing. I recognize the skill, the craft, and the quality of it, but I was thinking this was a 12-month a la Crisis on Infinite Earths DC event. And so far it's not. And maybe I'm just judging it for what I was expecting it to be versus what it is. But I feel that's kind of how they had pitched it and what they'd led us to believe. Yeah,
I mean, I don't feel it was pitched that way. I mean, I think when we heard about this, the timing was off because Metal would have been it's right in the middle of Metal, which is kind of giving you some of those pieces of Rebirth and Easter eggs and other characters and glimpses into some other things more so. Now, obviously Superman's going to play a role in this. So that'll be, maybe that'll be the inroad, I guess, to DCU. But yeah, I was kind of hoping they wouldn't muddy the waters too much because we're still in the middle of Metal. And so we've got to get to February to get through that. So I kind of hope they take their time with this and just lay the groundwork with the Watchmen characters and kind of get the gang back together before they do any more of the DCU stuff. I think they need to hold up and take it a little slower.
I mean, I can see where you're coming from and kind of, I don't want to say rebuilding the Watchmen universe, but making it current and relevant before a crossover makes sense. But even if you look at the back with the house ads they've got with the one of Superman and Dr. Midnight, or with Lex presumably facing off against maybe Ozymandias, or Batman reading Rorschach's journal, and things of that sort, it heavily implies these two things totally crossing over and butting head to head. There's a war coming, is what we've been led to believe.
And that's like in the next issue? Is that what the ad says? It's in the next issue?
Well, it doesn't say it's in the next issue. It's saying it's in the series.
Okay.
At this point, the two universes have not even in this story touched.
Good, because I hate that when they do that.
But they're going to.
Yeah, but I want Metal to be done, because otherwise it's not going to work. Otherwise they're not going to get their stories straight, and somebody's going to go off book, and it's not going to work right. It's not going to mesh well. But if somebody can finish their event, and then we can go into the next one, it makes a little more sense. Why they took so long from Rebirth to get to the Button before we actually ever touched on anything again. They put some distance, I think, to get a plan together, and I hope they don't convolute it too much.
I don't
trust them. I don't trust them to have 5 and 6 major things going on and everything working. It already isn't.
Well, I don't think they've got that many major things going on. I think they should have finished up Metal before they started this. I agree with that. I think they should have told probably A Lonely Place of Dying before they kicked off the Oz event. But because of the timeline of stuff, that didn't work either. In terms of being able to stagger the stories that way. And I think they should have started it a little sooner with the Button kicking off earlier, because it's only in recent comics, like I think it was Action Comics of this week, that ended the Oz effect, where a few other things start to tie together and do what I felt was set up for what I thought this story was going to be. Again, time has been stolen as far back as Rebirth. We know this. How does it play out again, what we got here from an execution point of view, I thought was awesome. It was great, but I was having a hard time connecting at it because I kept waiting for another shoe to drop that was nowhere to be found. the fact that Superman is in here for 4 pages doing really not much made this feel, again, like, Watchmen 13, not the first issue of what I had thought was a pivotal DC event.
Watchmen Volume 2, it doesn't feel like it's coming right on the heels of 12. I mean, it feels like there's some time has passed, and I think there's definitely some interesting stories to be told in that area. And again, I mean, I don't mind that they weave the overarching mysteries of rebirth and into this, but they took so long to revisit it with the Button. They took so long, and now it just seems like they're everything's coming out at once, and it's not coming out well in a cohesive manner for me. And so I kind of hope they take their time and get it right.
Well, but at the end of the Button, this was what was teased as the next chapter, and there is no carryover from the Button. And it's what I'm hearing you say, and correct me if I'm getting this wrong, is that...
Well, I'm shoehorning metal in there somewhere because it just seems like it's taking on the mantle of the DC event driving everything forward.
It is a DC event, I'll grant that, but to me it's not furthering the story set up by DC Universe Rebirth. Whereas
Isn't Plastic Man in there somewhere?
Sure.
He was kind of introduced and was a big deal in the Button, and people got excited about that.
Was Plastic Man in the Button?
Was it the Button or the Rebirth?
It was the Forge or casting where he was brought back as part of Metal. And I'm not arguing that Metal.
See what I'm saying?
Is an
See
event.
what I'm saying? See how convoluted it is?
My point is, they started a storyline of time being stolen and missing pieces and stuff in Rebirth. They furthered it in the Button. This was what they had teased as the next major storyline here, and it's not picking up any of those threads. Batman and Flash from the Button are nowhere to be found here. We've got most of this, again, 26 out of 30 pages of what's happening in the Watchmen universe after some length of time, and 4 pages of what appears to be happening, whether it's in the same universe or a different world is unclear even. And if they had sprinkled in Easter eggs and stuff like that, yeah, I'd have been happy with that or whatever, but that's not what they did. Maybe that's not what they set out to do. But I feel the way they had pitched it, or the way I felt it was pitched and the way you felt it was pitched are clearly very different.
Yes. I think we're on opposite ends of the spectrum there.
Absolutely. And it worked better.
And I also
do
not have the luxury of maintaining a library of my previews, so mine is long gone from the solicitation cycle.
It's all up on the Diamond website. I've actually got something that when we decide what we're going to do for a future episode, I put down the item code. I've got some code that looks at the item code and pulls the solicit.
As exciting as that sounds,
it is. It's fascinating.
I am going to stick with being excited after reading the Ash Can, and then being encouraged by this first issue on how well it really matched the tone and the spirit of that last Watchmen volume.
That last Watchmen volume, as if there had been multiple.
I enjoyed the before Watchmen too, so I think those were all really quality comics as well. So I might be in the minority there. But yeah, so I'm excited to see where this goes, and I had a lot of fun with this issue. For
me, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you're saying about the quality of it, how it continued respectfully on with the Watchmen stuff. I just went in with perhaps just wrong expectations and things that are very Watchmen-esque, like the couple of New York Gazette pages at the end or whatever. Just like those text pieces did nothing for me in Watchmen, they did nothing for me here. But again, it's in the tone and the style of that. So while I think it was executed exceedingly well, it didn't connect with me, and it wasn't what I was expecting and wanting it to be, and maybe that's on me. I'm curious what other people are going to feel and think about this. For me, I'm going with a B-, and I'm really torn on this because I think it's some fabulous writing, some incredible art, and again, capturing the tone, the style, the feel of Watchmen, and carrying that forward without feeling like derivative, cheap, or a knockoff. That's really hard to do, and they did do that well. But having, again, set it up as to, well, what happened in the Buttons continuing here, that's, for me, where they dropped the ball. So I'm going with like I said, a B- on this. I don't think it's something that necessarily somebody should steer away from unless they are pathological in the belief that Only Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons should ever touch the Watchmen characters, because the storyline continues here.
Yeah, you get a lot for your money here. It's a $5 book, but it's 40 some pages, and it felt meaty. A lot of the 9-panel grids. So you get a lot of content here.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really good introduction to, I think, what some of the characters are going to be. And I gave it an A-. I really liked it, and it really kind of scratched the itch that started when I read the Ashcan. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, clearly I should have read the Ashcan. I think that would have changed my opinion of this substantially.
It would have changed your expectations, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember there being much in the button that about this title. So that maybe if I had paid attention and seen whatever they did there, it might have colored my expectations a little.
I thought it ended with basically promoting that Doomsday Clock was coming out in December, with the implication that's where that story continued. But I have to go double check. Shall we move on to our Marvel book?
Yeah.
This is Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows number 13. This is part 1 of 8 years later. And as one might guess, they've moved the story forward 8 years. Well, actually, technically, the final page of the previous issue by the previous creative team jumped the story forward 8 years. And this issue just kind of picks up on the heels of that.
Which is kind of a bummer, because that was Jerry Conway, and I thought it was really great. I thought he really had a great voice, and
I thought it was Ryan Stegman. Who did that?
Was it Stegman the whole time?
I'd have to double check.
I kind of. Of course, there's been a couple of volumes of Renew Your Vows, but I'm pretty sure Jerry Conway was involved in some of them. And then this kind of reminded me when you said 8 years later, because we had a Marvel event that was 8 months later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting. Nothing to do with this.
No, I was excited when they were going to move it 8 years forward. I thought that was a smart move. I think it would allow the character of Spiderling to get to high school age, which is just a more interesting time. But then It should have.
It should have,
but they've mined that ground extensively before in the MC2 universe, where we had Mayday Parker.
I actually felt like she was less mature in this than she was in the last volume, where she was 8 years younger.
That's funny, and that's probably a fair assessment too.
It's kind of sad, though.
I will say there was a funny moment early on in the opening action sequence where Spiderling has been surprised or hit or knocked around by one of the villains, and Spider-Man's doing the "Annie, are you okay? Are you okay, Annie?"
That's a good one. Yeah.
I thought was hilarious. And I'll admit, it's a dated reference even now, much less 8 years from whenever we were to wherever we are. Referencing, Smooth Criminal from, 87?
Maybe, yeah.
But it's totally Spider-Man. It totally fits, even though it's a complete, hey, you're giving away the secret identity there, dude. Of course, it turns out just to be a Danger Room sequence. And to me, that was part of the problem, is most of the action we got was here in this Danger Room sequence. We get 3 other scenes. Peter driving Annie to school, suggesting, hey, let's have a family day out. Peter and MJ planning said family day, and then the 3 of them winding up at Coney Island, which is not where Peter was telling Annie they might go. And they end with the Lizard showing up, so, we're going to have a fight to start the next issue with. And that was it. I felt there was not a whole lot of character progression, of kind of resetting the status quo. I mean, there was some of it, but...
I mean, it did not feel 8 seconds later, after the previous volume. I don't feel like Mary Jane and Peter are any older in their marriage. Their relationship is the same, or it's even kind of taken a step back. I didn't think it had moved forward. Again, I don't think Spiderling, and we got to get a better name for her than Spiderling, because that is awful.
And they're talking about that in the book.
And I don't know, Little Spider or something like that. I don't know. We need something else. But she could have used that 8 years for something. She just didn't seem to have a personality that was more interesting than what it was before. And so I don't know what you went 8 years forward for.
I think I know why. I think when they were trying to get the new creative team on board, they were like, well, geez, I don't know. You got this kid, you got Peter and Mary Jane.
What else can I do here? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and somebody may have suggested be at the editor of the writer, hey, what if we move them forward 8 years? Then we can take a little time break from the previous run or previous creative team and go that way or whatever. And Spider-Man as a teenager worked, so let's do Spider-Ling as a teenager, much like Spider-Girl, the MC2 universe worked as a teenager for a serious amount of time. But this wasn't bad, but the change of creative team with the jump forward 8 years, they kind of dropped the ball, and it felt, to your point, like it regressed a little bit versus progressed 8 years. And what we got wasn't bad, but I didn't feel there was much meat on the bone. And it was funny because the solicit asks, what new threat has emerged to menace the wall crawlers? And I'm flipping through this, and I'm like, I think the answer's none. Everything, we've got the equivalent of a Sinister Six in the training room. We've got the lizard at the end. Nothing new, which disappointed me. Where I would like to see them go with this title is, I want to see Spider-Ling, or whatever codename Annie goes by in the future. I want to see her team up with Spider-Girl from the MC2 universe and whatnot that we had seen in Spider-Verse and maybe a few of the other Spider characters, just to give Spider-Ling a chance to be on her own for a little bit, to grow up a little bit, and to compare and contrast this effective Spider-Girl with that one.
Yeah, they need to do something. I don't know if it needs to be as drastic as maybe killing off Mary Jane and Peter or something, but this thing's not working as is. And
what they could do is they could like whack one of Peter's legs like they did in the MC2 universe. Or what they could do, I mean, they've covered this sort of ground before.
Yeah.
They need to do something.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want them to kill off the couple, because that's the real hook there, was having them together and happily as a family. That was the fun part. So I just don't think the 8 years worked, at least not in this first issue. And I hope they find something that captures the kind of magic. I mean, I'm going to go all the way back to the first volume, because that was, I think, it kind of peaked for me then. That was the best of what this title had to offer, and it was a lot of fun, and was some new angle on, you know, a Spider title that had been around for a long time in some form or fashion. So I hope they can find their voice here. I'm not hopeful, and I probably have a shorter leash. I definitely have a shorter leash than you do. So I won't be as patient. I'll give it another issue or two, just because I've enjoyed that previous volumes so much. But yeah, I thought this was kind of a misfire, and I gave it a C-.
I can understand that. Again, I kind of liked what we got, but it was not strong. It was I liked this setting and age group we had here better than the previous run, but the previous run was stronger. But frankly, if you want something like this, I would seriously consider checking out the MC2 universe with that Spider-Girl that ran for, I'm thinking, 100 issues or so. It was some great stuff, and thematically very similar to this, but well done.
Now, that was the Mayday?
That was Parker? Mayday Parker, yeah.
Okay.
She had younger brother Benji. Peter had aged, whereas here he doesn't seem to really be any older than he ever was.
Yeah, and 8 years of parenting is going to put at least a couple of wrinkles, maybe a gray hair in there. I'm surprised they didn't make him look a little older.
Yeah, I was disappointed. In the other one, in MC2, they went with the goatee and stuff of, you know, give him facial hair, that'll age him.
Well, it's something.
It's either that or a little bit of gray, one of the two, you know, or both. Yeah,
gray temples and a goatee. I like it.
So, I was hoping for more with this. Again, didn't think it was horrible, but unless you really feel the need to get every Spider-Man related title, I would be hard pressed to give a justification as to why this would be even remotely a must-read kind of a book, which is a shame.
Yeah.
Shall we move to our other book?
Yes.
This is Sword Quest number 5 from Dynamite Entertainment. This is part of the Atari line of books they're doing. And I want to stress it's a line of books, not a narrative universe, because I think each one's pretty much in their own little world. I had read number 4 right...
Kind of.
What do you mean, kind of?
Well, I mean, it's possible that future ones could also refer to... Because it was a lot about the Atari universe and some of the actual things that happened to the corporation and the video game industry. And it's possible that future titles could also cross that ground. And I think that would be fun and fertile ground to kind of explore Atari's history based on and have it around these stories. Because I think this was a really unique way to look at that video game history.
I agree with all of that. And my point was just that, like, Centipede, which is a post-apocalyptic world or whatever, maybe even another world or whatever.
Yeah, different entirely. Definitely.
Different entirely. That was my only point.
And there are only 2 so far, right?
I thought there might have been another one, but I haven't been paying close enough attention. This may just be the second.
No asteroids or space invaders or anything.
Give it time. Give it time. Asteroids thing could be fun.
Yeah. Well, this one was a surprise. I'll tell you, because I barely remember the game. I didn't own it, didn't play it, I don't think. But really, it really kind of was a cool slice of Atari mania. A little bit of that, and kind of also with a little bit of sword and sorcery and stuff in there too as well. I mean, I thought it was really a fun surprise because I wasn't sure what I was going to get.
I would agree with all of that. I thought the story was good. The art was good, not great. There are a couple of places it's like, come on,
dynamite
people,
art.
Open your eyes.
Yeah.
Because the eyes are always squinty or whatever in some places. I mean, the basic premise was kind of the Sword Quest game was along the lines of The Last Starfighter of, finding the chosen one, if you will. It's a 5-issue series. This is the ending chapter of it, so you're not going to jump in here and have any clue what's going on if you've missed the rest. Some questions are answered here. A couple others are raised. Exploring the history of Atari as a company, I thought that was a really fun way to go. But while the miniseries concludes, it sets up more with these characters, and I kind of have mixed feelings about that, because it's not like... I don't have any problem with them setting up more. Hey, this story is over, but we could tell more. This story ended with the story not feeling totally done, and that they have almost started that next story versus ending on kind of a end of a hero's journey sort of a note. And I'm expecting there to be a Sword Quest Volume 2 or whatever coming out in a couple of months or whatever.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed this enough that I'd certainly consider such a miniseries, but it's not guaranteed to get on my pull list. It really comes down to what else is around at the time, and does the pitch for that sound cool?
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping that it doesn't, but yeah, it looks like there was enough of there's further adventures to be had. I was kind of hoping they'd button it up a little more, because I don't want to revisit this. I think this was enough, and it was fun, and it was a good time, but I don't want them to drag this out and now let's go to the other realm for another arc or 2.
I kind of agree. I think if they want to do some more stuff with Atari, I like the idea of an asteroids series.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine you've got people that are miners in like the asteroid belt or something, and somebody decides, hey, we just need to clear some debris or the station's in danger or whatever. And they go out in their little fighter craft and they shoot the asteroid and it blows to smaller ones. And now those are going and they realize, oh crap, we've got a problem here. And the whole thing is them essentially playing the video game, if you will, of can we destroy all the asteroids before they destroy us?
But I think you have to recruit somebody who actually to actually accomplish this goal. They had to be an asteroids junkie when they were a kid and actually play the game, and you have to tie it back into the real world, like Sword Quest did, and not go the Centipede route.
I think it could work either way, but you've got to have a really strong concept to take some of those games that were variants of point and shoot. And turn them into something that's the equivalent of a story-based property like we get with games today.
Yeah.
And again, with Centipede, they had an interesting take on it. But it's also kind of anchored by the whole concept of Centipede has certain things about it, visually or whatever. It's not that it can't work, it's that it's a challenge, and you gotta have somebody on the writing side up to it that can ground it and give it that story it needs, but also somebody on the art side that can really sell it. And I think going here with the real-world human geek, almost quasi-nostalgia aspect was what made this work.
Yeah, I read all 6 of these, the 0 issue and the five regular issues, in quick succession. So I've got I read it more of as a big chunk, but there were some low points. Some of the issues were much stronger than others.
I would agree.
And if we're focusing on that 5th issue, I think the first couple were the strongest issues in the whole run. But the 5th was good, and it did some fun stuff, but definitely not as strong as how this series started. But yeah, I think there's enough here that it would be fun for anyone who owned an Atari. I think would get a kick out of this book, and anyone who was like maybe a video game enthusiast might actually enjoy it as well because of that angle. And it's got some fun stuff for people that like sword and sorcery books as well, and some weird fantasy angles that I thought were kind of weak in places, but still it has that flavor for you.
Well, certainly, again, if you like that kind of the chosen one sort of story, it's just set in the modern day and age. And I think if you grew up in the age of Atari, ColecoVision, and those sorts of gaming consoles and stuff, the early days of home video games,
8-bit, yeah,
you've got the touch point for this. Whether you had those particular systems or not doesn't, I think, matter much. If you were around and interested in video games even casually, because I think that kind of describes myself, and I thought this was fun. It was a good backdrop in which to set a story, and the sort of story they told, while not necessarily highly original, was well done and interesting. It's the kind of thing, though, if this were turned into a movie, it's not a summer blockbuster.
No, I don't. It's probably a sci-fi movie.
Yeah, but it could still be a fun one.
Yeah.
It could also be one that almost has a Sharknado. It's it depends what take they took on the movie.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
To me, this was fun. I'm gonna go with a B- on this. I think it reads better all at once than in installments because it's one story that's just serialized out.
Yeah, and I think it comes out of the gate really strong, including that 0 issue, which I think is a lot of fun. So I'd read that too, and hopefully that's collected in the trade. I would assume it with everything else, but you never know. A lot of good stuff here. I give it a B. I like it. I would recommend it to a lot of folks for a lot of different reasons. So I think it's definitely worth a read.
Yeah, pretty much do it.
Oop, that's good.